hey there, everyone. Welcome on into VG Emporium, video game music and more. I'm your host, Rage Cage, and I have a very special guest here in the shop today, that being Chase Bethea, who is a VGM composer, but hey, I'll let him say hello to all of you himself.
Hi, I'm Chase Bethea, professional video game composer.
Professional video game composer, which is pretty crazy, pretty cool to have here in the all things my Rinky Dink podcast.
No. This was, I was saying, when we met at MagWest in person last year, and I remember saying, like, actually meeting him, like, oh, hey, I wanted to be on that podcast. This is on my little spreadsheet list here.
that got me too. Just like showing the spreadsheet. There was my name, and yeah.
It was great. Yeah. So thanks for showing up. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Oh yeah. Thank you for finally getting in here. And you're the thing that you wanted to talk about is going to be pretty interesting. But before we get into that, let you talk about who you are and what you've done, like what you're doing, and to get folks, if they're not familiar with Chase Bethea, so they will know.
Yeah, sure. So I've been working in the industry for 13 years. Last month was my 13th year anniversary. I've shipped over.
And congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, that's as well to say in terms of being in it so long, but still feeling an adolescent, really, is at this point. And so that, and I shipped about 25 games in that time, and wow. I released about, I think it's about 13 soundtracks, so that almost averages out to a soundtrack a year. And
wow.
But it was like that, but there's obviously some gaps in between. But this year I'll be releasing 3 soundtracks alone, maybe 4, so we'll see, but for sure at least 2. And I've done guest speaking. I did about 40 guest speaking talks in about 2 to 3 years. 40 talks, from Berklee College of Music to being a global Game Jam keynote for the year 2022, and talking at GDC. I gave 3 talks at GDC last year, ECGC, PAX, and a bunch of different other, like some colleges and other different gaming places. MagWest, of course.
Yeah.
And MagFest.
Man, that's a lot.
No, yeah. So I've been nominated for my work. I've won a couple awards for my soundtracks as well, and so I'll just keep moving forward and doing more video game music and building that resume and portfolio.
And what I've listened to of your stuff, it's really interesting. Just like, I can hear a lot of the influences you're having in there, and really awesome work.
Thank you.
So the thing that you wanted to talk about here on the show was something called Legacy, or Composer's Legacy, which is appropriate, seeing as you've 13 years in VGM composition, and I have some big ideas. You've shared to me what the main idea behind it is, but I'm really interested to hear what you've really got to say about it.
Yeah, let's hop right in. So I remember thinking, ever since I was taking music class, I recall reading about composers that have stood the test of time, and our time, not all time. And I'm going to, just small tangent, I'm going to explain. In my opinion, all time doesn't exist. Humans have not made music from the beginning of time, nor were humans around for the beginning of time. So after humans, if this day were to come, time will still continue. So that's just my opinion about why I don't say all time, I say our time. And so, but during humans' time, the greats like Mozart, Bach, Beethoven, Rousseau, Brahms, Mahler, Ravel, Tchaikovsky, Penderecki, Mussorgsky, Schumann, Chopin, Schoenberg, and more are all studied in classes. So that's a legacy in itself, right? And so when I end up Googling top video game composers in the world, obviously it was expected. I saw Kondo, I saw Uematsu, I saw Shimomura, I saw Kaufman, Cude, Yamane, Folan, Kirkhope, Masuda, and even Tanaka came up, but then Fox came up, and McCree came up, and McConnell, so Toby Fox, Neil McCree, Peter McConnell, Tim Larkin came up, and of course Austin Wintory was in it too, but also other composers like Jessica Curry and Winifred Phillips and T. Lopez and Gregson Williams Harry Gregson Williams and Gareth Coker and even Bear McCreary and Michael Giacchino were in it. And so that's 42 something composers in the world. And I thought to myself, okay, some of them have like a really big legacy, and some of them haven't really done that much. And this isn't shade by any kind, and it's just mostly just showing me. I remember thinking from my 34th birthday, I went to a library, and I did remember going down in aisles, and I do remember seeing the classical and romantic and impressionist composers and all of their works on books and things. And I'm thinking, like, the bodies of work is really what creates the legacy in itself. And so I've had a new vision of creating that type of work for myself, so that I could be on a list of, mostly, like, I'm thinking legacy is like the impact that you've made on thousands, if not millions, of people in life. And when you put this in there and you get this like conflated work of a phenomena of art called video games, it's how you're defined among the masses, and to make it on like a Masters of VGM list. It's your name that's mentioned. It's among the peers when you're asked about their favorite video game composer. It's your face. It's your instrument or outfit that's in a museum or in an exhibit. And mostly, like, the timeline, the legacy is a timeline story of art that you contributed to the world for countless generations.
Damn. Yeah, that is pretty heavy. That's pretty heavy. That's a lot,
sorry,
but still, no.
Like I hit you.
It's like, when you really sit down and think about it like that, it's like, it's amazing. Just like all these people, like you said, the classical composers, and just how much impact their music have had. Like, hundreds, like 100 years later, maybe 100 plus. And then you sit down and think about these VGM composers that, like, the oldest going back to, like, 50, 60 years even now.
Yeah, close. 54, I think, is the oldest. It is.
Yeah, and just the impact that their works have had. Like, a lot, like, most people would probably just brush it off as like, it's video games. What is that thing? But a lot of them are inspired by these classical composers, and everything after that, and their works either reflect that or even in some ways surpass that. Not to, like, be like, haha, but it's just. It's just amazing to think that these names that we know, but just others may not know, or just like their body of work is just so massive. Like take Koji Kondo, is just most everybody knows, like, Mario's theme, like most anybody, and they're not really aware of the name, but they know the music type thing. So it's just kind of.
Right.
I know. So it's kind of harder to say, like, for people to, I don't know what I'm getting at, but you know what I mean, though. It's just.
I do know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, hello, this is AJ. Outside of this recording session, I just realized that in editing this, we forgot to mention about the music. The picks we made aren't necessarily related to the topic that Chase wanted to talk about. It was just songs that we really liked. But there is a little bit of connective tissue there because, the composers, of course, do have their own legacy as, like, things they're really well known for. And also notice that we didn't introduce the track that we opened up with, which was Juste from Eternal Ring, composed by Keiichi Sagawa and Tsukasa Saito. And this was a pick by Chase. And luckily, we hit record, as we were kind of chatting and kind of getting ready to really start the show proper. So he actually talked a bit about this song and the game, and that's where we're going to continue proper.
It's one of those that I don't even remember I know it's near the end of the game somewhere, but when I listen to the soundtrack by itself, it's one of those. I was driving, and then the way that it starts, it gets that good feeling, and then it's one of those more produced tracks from the soundtrack that I think is digestible. I like the obscure ones. Trust me, there's a lot of obscure Eternal Ring stuff in there. And something that I don't actually know if I told this story. So I didn't like the music from the initial gameplay, and I didn't think I was actually going to finish the game when I started the game because it was first person. And I don't do well with first-person games, but I was thinking when I first started the game, I was like, what kind of music is this? And this music that we're listening to now, it was not playing. It was something like,
Yeah, a little bit more like kind of just there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it became one of my favorite soundtracks by the time I finished the game, to the point where I wrote an article about it, I think on GameMusic.com. I think it's still up.
dang,
Yeah, and I did a
okay.
whole breakdown review. I'll have to try to find that actually really
You
quick.
gotta love those soundtracks that, like, you know, like I said, you're playing the game, you're hearing the music, and it's not really kind of clicking with you. And then over time, like, you revisit it, like, you know, years later. So, and like you're listening to it now, like with like, you know, what you've learned and everything. And it's like becomes just like one of the best things ever. So I think it's time we get into our next song before we dive back into your topic of legacy. And so this next song is going to be The Bottomless Crevace, Sector 4, from Kickmaster, composed by Nobuyuki Shioda and Yuusuke Takahama. So that was The Bottomless Crevace, Sector 4 from Kickmaster, composed by Nobuyuki Shioda and Yuusuke Takahama. So, Chase, what'd you think of that one?
I liked it. It really does well with the melody in terms of getting into those upper ranges without it being ear piercing. And it's got that nice little drive, and of course, you know, the noise channel doing really good rhythms and drums, sounds, and tracks and all that stuff. Because I think that's the 2A03 chip, right?
Yep. So just two squares, one triangle, one noise, and then the DPCM, which
Yes.
used a really good effect here.
Yeah, definitely. So, but we know, I mean, I'm sure from our research, we do pretty well that those title composers really knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
with that sound
And actually, one of them, I want to say it's Nobuyuki Shioda. As far like talking about legacy, his he's more well known for the Rekka series, or at least a couple of the games in the like Rekka Summer Festival, like shoot 'em up games. Those are, I think those soundtracks are really well regarded. I'm not too familiar with them, so I'm maybe butchering some stuff here, but yeah, that's if anything that he's known about, that's it right there.
There's a lot of Japanese composers that wrote music for games, and some of them are still able to do it to this day.
Yeah.
And I think that is impressive in itself as well, right? Because once you reach past, I think once you get past 20 years, you could decide to stop. But I guess it depends on what work comes in, how much work do you have, the company that's still afloat. That's a legacy in itself, right? We talk about Taito. Taito's was around for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And it really makes an impact in terms of, again, like I was saying, countless generations.
Yeah, some of them are, like you said, some of them are still going. Like, you know, some to name off are Yuzo Koshiro. A couple that I follow, like Tadahiro Nita. He he was a part of Micro Cabin, which was like, you know, mostly Japanese only games on like the PCs, like PC98 or MSX.
PC98. Okay, yeah.
But like, you know, I follow him on Twitter, and he's still like writing music. You know, he's just now started using Furnish Tracker, which is like the latest sound chip tracker, and he's been playing around with the PSG, like the SN76489 PSG, which is also known as like the DCSG. And it's been crazy to watch him figure it out, because it's so different from the AY chip that he's used to on the MSX. So it's been really fun to see him like figure out how to work with the noise channel, how the third wave channel and the noise channel interact with each other to create like that really scrungy kind of bass sound. But yeah, it's just really cool. So like some of these guys that are like, you know, getting in their 50s, 60s are still like, you know, doing the music, even like, you know, if not making like, you know, newer music, still working with those chips that they had worked with all those years ago. So it's
even I think if you talk about that, especially Keiichiro, like he does rearrangements in a DAW versus like how he used to probably do it before and what other software. Him and what's even more crazy is to see him and Alberto Gonzalez, who's one of my favorite game composers. When he does the videos of and revamps of different things and shows how he did it in software that he had and has it booting, but him and Keiichiro talk on Twitter X and have this dialogue between each other, and I think that's amazing because that's the music I grow with those composers. Keiichiro, a lot of people like him for Streets of Rage and maybe ActRaiser and Etrian Odyssey, but I love Keiichiro as another article that I wrote about for Beyond Oasis. And no one talks about that. Nobody. And writing that article was something where, like, a badge of honor for me is that it got him to follow me on Twitter.
Oh, wow.
And it's writing that article because he was so impressed with the breakdown that I did from one of the themes from the game. And then even finding Alberto Gonzalez, and then he followed me on Twitter just because, I think I had reached out and just followed, and so from there. But those guys are really masterful folks that still do it. And again, there's legacy, right, in terms of the longevity, and then they're still around. They still kind of dabble and do really cool things, and still here making it happen.
Still doing it. And actually, speaking of McAlvey there, he just shared some videos of him booting up a ZX Spectrum, showing this game called Acid Shooter or something like that, which was the first game he worked on and actually the first music he worked on. And it's really awesome, just hearing that, just that really buzzy sound chip just producing this stuff that, before he touched the Game Boy is just, I don't know if you have a chance to check that out. It's really interesting. Just the ZX Spectrum is a really interesting machine because visually it's really simple, but when somebody's really intimate with it and knows how to program with it, they can get some of the most amazing things out of it.
I actually wrote music for the CPC Amstrad. Are you familiar with that?
Oh yeah, I vaguely I know what it is, but yeah.
So I actually learned, I think it was at this time, it was my 6th tracker, because now I'm about to be on my 8th. That'll tell you kind of what there's 3 trackers there that I'm kind of working in between right now. Yeah. And so I taught myself Arcos Tracker 2, and it was the only tracker that could produce on the CPC Amstrad because someone needed music for it. And so I wrote music for this. I taught myself this tracker, I think, in a month. And I wrote about 3 or 4 themes, and it boots on the CPC Amstrad, which was folks don't know, the equivalent to the ZX Spectrum or the Tandy. And that was kind of its competitor and stuff, but it's mostly a European type of computer.
Yeah, those Europeans were really big on the microcomputers.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, that's one of the cool things. Like I said, one of the 6 trackers that I taught myself and learned it and shipped the game. Surprisingly.
Still, and that's really just the really cool stuff that. Which sound chip is the Amstrad, the CPC? I'm trying to remember. Is it?
Man, I don't remember off the top of my mind. Yeah.
But no, it's just really cool that people create these specific trackers to emulate, and then ultimately be exported to work on actual hardware for just these niche computers that hardly anybody knows about here in the States or even out there where it was made and stuff. And it's just, again, that whole thing of legacy of just those sound chips, those machines, just people still having love for these things even these years later, and then people discovering them now that had no idea, wouldn't grow up with them at all, just all these kids that again, Furnace Tracker introducing all these kids to all these just super obscure and in some ways maybe not pointless, but just kind of just sound chips that aren't really used in anything now, and it's just some of them are making just insane things.
Yeah, and I'm mostly excited for, as we're talking about Furnace Tracker more, I just discovered it because I'm actually writing music for an Atari Lynx game. I will explain. This all is going to tie into it, right? This game is amazing. The way it looks, the idea about it, and I'm very excited. And Furnace track. I'm like I said, that's gonna be the 8th tracker I learned because there's 2 other trackers that I'm kind of in between about what's going on. And but to discover all those chipsets, I'm thinking, oh wait, you can actually write on this for this. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm excited for it. So and wow, the phenomenal programming and design for that, and it's pretty and it's nice.
And the emulation for most of those chips are pretty spot on. You know, the export is only limited to .vgm I think right now, but they're starting to work towards actually be able to like export files like in the native formats, so like, you know, .nsf, .sf, even like .sid, you know, just all those things. So basically, I think it's called like exporting ROM, like what Devilmask can do. Yeah, Devilmask can do that, but it's like, you know, limited to only like maybe 8, 9 different chips. But eventually, hopefully, Furnace will get there. So it's gonna be pretty cool. So now, good sir, do you want to get into your next track?
Yeah, let's do it. From a Taito to a Taito, and let's do Exit Stage 6 by Hideki Takahagi.
So that was Stage 6, Frozen Hotel, from Exit, composed by Hideki Takahagi. And give me some good pads, some really good breaks, and then throw in some of the squealing horns in there and just, like, you know, go all over the place with it. And just, I'm sold. I'm a happy boy. I'll just sit there hours, listen to it.
No, for sure. Yeah, it's, like I said, and I just enjoy the modulations that occur too, because you're thinking it's going to start off this way and it's going to go in the same, and then it drops you somewhere else. And I love that so much. I love those types of compositions. And on the PSP, it sonically sounds amazing. I think I was using like some old Apple headphones and plugged it to the PSP, and it sounds great. They really know how to mix out there. It tells me it's really nice. It's really nice. And
yeah,
like I said, if it's an in-house composer for Taito, they know what they always known what they've always known.
Oh yeah, that's Zuntata. No, Zuntata is a powerhouse, a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, absolutely. So the reason I talked about the Atari links and why I'm excited about it, I know a lot of people may be like, okay, yeah, sure. But for me and my new goal, when I started in this industry, my goal was to be able to compose in any genre that I could any genre, period. because when I grew up with listening to video game music, that's what I had discovered, was that it's different genres. So to be a proper video game composer, you'd have to study all the genres properly and write in all those styles. What ended up happening is not only could I do that, but I could conflate genres together and write in different styles too. Now what it's become is, okay, most composers that are coming that are working in the industry are composers that found themselves a pocket that they're in a lane that they're good at, and they stick there and they go with that, and that's fine. But but you never learn about the composers that came from underutilizing the trackers that we've used, and they do it and they make it in. Some people can do it and some people can't do it. And so now my goal is to think, if I'm to be a proper video game composer, I should be able to write for every console era and succeed, meaning I've at least worked on it and shipped it beyond that, and that would make me a full-fledged video game composer, because not only would I've already embodied what a video game composer is by doing all the genres, but now I can write for every console part. That's why I'm so happy about the furnace and the chipset, and then being able to do that, and I can write on those things. And this is just like a personal goal of mine. I'm not saying out there is like, if you want to be a video game composer, you should be. I'm not saying that. I'm saying this is my purpose of becoming what I think is great, because in terms of legacy, because I'm able to not only write in the modern era for those things and accomplish that for a lot of genre styles, but I went back from where video game composers started and paved the way from the beginning, and I can do it the way they did it up until now. And I don't see or think a lot or any composer ever do that starts where I'm at right now. They usually just want to do the most popular indie game, the most popular AAA game, and they're not interested in any of the other stuff. And that's cool. Please do your thing. For me, I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, being able to stick with, like, doing modern stuff like on DAWs, creating music that's contemporary with what's going on now, but then being able to reach way back into those places that, that influenced you in the first place, and even further back beyond that, because, like you were saying,
further back beyond that, yeah,
we learned how to work trackers. Before trackers, there was programming the music too. Like a lot of the Japanese composers used music macro language (MML). So if you want to go a step further, you can learn MML. But yeah, no, it was just because that was crazy for me to learn, because when I first learned about trackers, I thought, oh, this is how they made this stuff. And then to slowly learn about this programming language, because I'd see some videos of just these strings of letters and numbers that made no sense to me, but then music was coming out of it. It was like, whoa. So again, it's just that reaching back even further is just as you yourself are learning.
Yep, exactly. So I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be fun. It's going to be very, very hard. Trust me. I'm kind of actually in that in between of where you're talking like the MML and the tracker point. But we'll see, because I haven't even touched Furnace. I was learning the other stuff, and I only work on it on weekends specifically.
Oh, wow. A weekend tracker. That's just filling.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is a good point to get into our next track here, and it actually ties into all that MML talk we had.
Okay.
So what I got here is Can't Believe You, Betrayal from Grounseed, and this is the OPN version, composed by, let's see here, Daisuke Takahashi. So that was Can't Believe You, Betrayal, from Grounseed, composed by Daisuke Takahashi. And for most folks, you're probably wondering, wait, isn't Grounseed by Ryo Umimoto or Ryo Takami? Well, you would be right for the YM2608 version of the soundtrack, which was additional, because if you didn't have that sound chip in your PC98, you only had the YM2203, you would get a totally different soundtrack for most part. And it was done by a slew of other composers, and one of them being Daisuke Takahashi, whose claim to fame is mostly doing various volumes of Sorcerian, so like selected Sorcerian from I want to say it's I can't remember the name of the company that did it, but yeah, it's kind of a cool little thing. And yeah, Chase, what did you think of this show?
Yeah, I think it was really punchy and really bouncy as well, and I really enjoyed it. It's very pleasant on the ears and really just fun and all around good. Like I was saying, it's kind of hard to not get something great out that sound chip.
Yeah, it's my love for the YM2203 is just ever growing, because it's just amazing when people can make something like this good with just only like 6 channels, 3 FM and 3 PSG channels. And then here, Daisuke is actually using that special trick where channel 3 is split up into 4 separate channels. So then he uses 2 channels for one instrument and then 2 for another, and usually using it for echo. And so that's why you're hearing 4 FMs here. But yeah, it fascinates me just how well they work with all this stuff. And
what I appreciate about some of the workflows and practices of Japanese composers is that they're not all trying to do it themselves, and it had that ability of, okay, this is the systems it works on. We're not going to try and compose on that chipset. Let's give someone else an opportunity, and here's what we have. Try to make it sound close to this, and they have work, and I think that's really cool in terms of it just being spread out. And I hear about that stuff here in the States, and I've heard about it, but it's not too common. And obviously, we have everything is streaming music now, right? You can stream the music off of these, PS5, PS4, PS3, PS2, and even PS1, and of course, Xbox and stuff. So it's not the same type of overflow of work. It would just be more so, hey, I've got a lot of music to write. You're going to be a ghost writer, or you can be assistant writer and you'll get composition, and that's cool too. So it just changes over time in terms of how the work is diversified. That's why when I write music for specific games, I really focus on the sonic identity and the sound palette, because my goal is, even though I know this game can play all the instrument levels that I could do it from recording them live and then putting them in, I know they'll play back fine. I still want it to be I never change up the palette completely, because it needs to be I learned through research and of how game music has been done, is that there needs to be cohesion and consistency, especially for the player, they really enjoy that. And I want it to be, whereas if you were in a different room and a game was being played, you wouldn't have to come into that room to visually see what it is. You could already know, oh, okay, it's this game, because I'm familiar with the sound set, and even in the modern era, right? And so that's how I kind of write and focus on my music that I write for games. It really is just, I guess, going to come down into longevity and sustainability in terms of your passion and how you can still manage to maneuver through the times and the era to continue forward. And I think that's the biggest trick right now in terms of doing, we talked about Gilberto Megalbi, and we talked about Keiichiro, and they're managing to do it. But what about this era of folks like me, really, honestly? If you hit a game and it's like Celeste or Undertale or Oregon and the Blind Forest, those are once every 3 years that you hear about the new one, and then they're put up there, right? Or Journey. And so for those composers, they're set for that. But what the ones, if they don't hit, meaning those games don't become as popular, it's not. And like I said, some of the composers we're listening to now, like Shioda and Takahashi and Takahama and others, they're still working, but they're not as celebrated or highlighted in that form, in that fashion. But that doesn't mean that the legacy isn't still established. Just wondering now, how of this era is it going to be to stand out, and in terms of what's going to be played and performed and remembered and brought back on a Masters of VGM list 10 years from now. I bring that up because it was really important, because I studied that from a lot of composers from their podcasts, and a lot of them had a lot of crossover. I was like, okay, yes, I know why you chose that Japanese composer. I know why you chose that one. I know. Okay, y'all really did y'all really like go deeper than some of them did, and some of them, and like I said, it's no shade. It's anything they like what they like. It's like Apple Jacks, but this is how I think, and I'm thinking, well, yeah, I didn't really see anything more than, it seems like it's just a bunch of like mostly nostalgia, and there's nothing wrong with that. And so I'm curious to know the podcasts that are 10 years from now, and if that list exists, will there be those that are not as popular on that list at that level? And will there be an influx of those that are not as popular? Like, it'll just be like, no, we've got to have this one on here because they pioneered the game music, and we had this, and et cetera, or this was one thing in my childhood. But will there be just a rising tide of a new set of video game composers, or will it still be the same ones?
Yeah, that's one of the things that I kind of like. I really do enjoy doing like those Masters of BGM episodes, but like for myself, I try to kind of steer towards those that I do personally like, but aren't based in nostalgia. It's more about I really love their body of work and how in past game influenced me, and then even trying to reach even further out of the norm, outside of the norm of the obscure. It's a really weird thing, but these composers that, like I said, aren't very well celebrated, but their body of work is just solid, amazing, good stuff. And maybe it's not as plentiful, but again, it's just it's made an impact on me, and I'd like to have it make an impact on other people, so that hopefully they would go, investigate it for themselves, and then be able to tell their other people about it, and then that's how it happens. So instead of highlighting, it's always good to highlight those that are very usually very well regarded, the big names like Koshiro, Kondo, Shimomura, Mitsuru Yamane, even. But it's always good to go for those that aren't the big names, people like Daisuke Takahashi, or even Shigeru Tomita, Akari Kaida, and Akihata, just to name a few. It's just kind of some of the ones that I picked. And it's just, again, they have a legacy, and maybe for some of them it's maybe outside of video games now, but still it's there, strong,
and cemented, implanted in the history of it. So yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you, and even if you didn't concur, I'm glad you concur. Because perspective is really cool.
It is. And I'm like I said, I'm trying to learn to do that more, especially with a lot of my future episodes and my choices, and how I focus on them, list out what the composers have done, maybe cool little things about them, maybe that are just aren't usually noted, and again, trying to bring them to the forefront, so others that happen to listen to my show are like, whoa, okay, I'm gonna check this out, and damn, they find a treasure trove.
Yeah, and I think you're doing a great job there in building that up in a really cool way.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
But I have a feeling, looking at our list here, our next few tracks are actually coming from those that are in the very well-regarded category here, and it's your track next. So what do you want to go with here?
We're gonna go with Bomberman Hero Redial by Chikuma Jun, or Jun
Chikuma, Jun Chikuma. So that was Redial from Bomberman Hero, composed by Junchiki Chikuma. I know Bomberman's music, like all the music by Jun Chikuma for Bomberman is just like so crazy and good, and it's just like the diversity of like each one, like, you know, some of them sound the same, like, but then there's those ones where like it's just like Mega Bomberman on the Sega Genesis, which is think like it's basically Bomberman 94 from the PC Engine. This one, Bomberman 64, just like each time there's like just something new and different in there, and it's just it feeds me.
Yeah, it works. It gets you energized, and it just keeps you moving, and it fits really well in the background. Like, it does what it's supposed to do.
And especially this one, seeing it has kind of like that Muzak, kind of like organ going on in the background. Like makes you feel like you're in like a little, like a shopping market or a
exactly
elevator.
I just really appreciate mostly just how well they're preserving, and they're able to kind of mix those sounds and make these type of tunes and make it happen in terms of it being shipped. Because like I said, this writing video game music is not easy by any standard, as we talked about earlier, from trackers to MLs and all these things. You really got to think, and then even with me, who I'm focusing on now more of interactive and dynamic adaptive music, and just come up with the systems of how things kind of coincide and interweave and just go together. It really just depends on the process and the creative mind that you're implementing.
Yeah, and that's something that still kind of like blows my mind, like, you know, learning how like the dynamic interactive music works, because you know, again, at MagWest, you remember Akil, he did that presentation on like dynamic music and showing like, you know, the use of like, what is it, Fmod is what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
I think it is. And just how it all works and everything, and just like a whole new like level of like, you know, composition and thinking that I do not see myself doing at all. You know, I'm just fine doing like my rinky-dink chip tunes and, you know, one-shot things, but still, it's just really like amazing, just how like seeing how it all actually works, because like, you know, playing games myself and like, you know, hearing music kind of change subtly, and like kind of working with like what's going on in there, and then actually seeing one of the things that, you know, makes it happen is again, like, really admirable to like that you guys are actually able to like do this, and, you know, kind of like do like a really consistently good job at it too.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's when I was chair of the IASIG, which is the Interactive Audio Special Interest Group, I think one of the few that knew there were about 10 audio middlewares, and I used to be able to name all 10. Usually I get about like 5, but I learned 3 of them on my own. So I learned Wise, I learned Fmod. Fmod Designer was the first I learned in getting into game audio, and then it turned to Fmod Studio. Then I took a class in Wise at Game SoundCon, and then I became enamored with Elias, and that's the one that will stick with me for a while. And of course there's Fabric and Cryware and Krill and Miles Sound System. Now it seems like I'm going through all of them, and I'm almost going to remember. Master Sound System as well. And so yeah, but they all do really interesting things in their own way, and it's a really big treat.
Yeah.
It's what excites me and what gets me interested. I love the subtleties of that. I think the biggest thing, and finding even, what game was I playing recently? I was like, what? That has interactive music? It was some kind of Sonic game. And I think I was really impressed because, of course, I mean, but at the time, like Sonic Sound Team, of course, you guys figured it out on Sega Genesis. Why am I surprised?
Yeah.
You guys figured out graphic parallaxing and all kinds of cool stuff being on there.
Yeah.
So, of course, you figured that out. But, yeah, it was really impressive to know that interactive dynamic music was going all the way back into, you know, the early 90s, 91, 94.
Yeah.
And I thought that was great. So, yeah, I think it makes a big difference. And I can't wait to do more presentations about the things that I've done for certain. I only did one. I did one at NAMM show about how I was able to do one from starting a fighting game in a PS1 graphic form of dynamic music, and then it going into combat, going through different levels if you're winning, and how well you're doing in combat to the victory music, and then loop all the way back seamlessly with no interruption to the beginning of the start screen.
Dang. Okay. I'm trying to figure out, like, and you found it, like you said, you found it in a way to do it where like there's no perceptible, like, you know, shift? Like it just kind of happens and you're just so in the moment, it's just like
you're still in the moment. Not only that, it's a rhythm almost fighting game too, because if you're paying attention to, we don't announce that, but if you're paying attention to the music, you'll know that you'll hit. If you do hits on the beat, you'll actually get further. And it's in a rock'em sock'em type of rhythm robot too, so it's not like it's made in the style of Bushido Blade.
Oh wow.
And that was the influence. So yeah, but
dang.
with robots in terms of like rock'em sock'em type of feeling.
Yeah.
And so if you could just imagine, put that together. But yeah, from start screen all the way to your victory and back to the start screen, the music is seamless.
Dang.
There's no interruption in terms of like select or anything like that. Just mostly you choose a player, you choose this, you're in. Music begins, music amps up, music gets very amped again to the highest point, victory music, and then back in.
Oh, no, now that'd be a cool experience. You said it's gonna be out on Google Play?
No, sorry, it was supposed to be on Stadia.
Oh
and we
no!
know what happened to that.
Oh, no.
So I think I have the game, but I know for sure I have the videos of how it works. So now that you seem interested, I think I'm going to kind of work on that this month to kind of promote the show.
Nice. Oh dang.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm gonna bring in our next track here, and again, whereas you had picked the Taito thing, and I wasn't aware of the Taito select and all. I was fully aware of your pick here, and I picked accordingly because it too is one of my favorite soundtracks from one of my favorite composers.
A legacy composer at this.
Yes, like truly just amazing what he's been able to do. But so this is Ein Some Keat from Saga Frontier 2, composed by Masashi Hamauzu. So that was Ein Some Keat from Saga Frontier 2, composed by Masashi Hamauzu. And I want to note here that this is from the scenario Mother's Sickbed. I do that because I played this game, like it was one of my first PS1 games back in, this is going to be hilarious to some, back in like 2002, 2003. I didn't get a PS1 until then. And this was one of my first games. And yeah, I love it. And so I know which scenarios the music's play in for the most part. And yeah, there's my little bit of a nerd out on it, but really hard to deny just how amazing Masashi Hamauzu is at just with all his compositions, like from his earliest stuff in Front Mission Gun Hazard all the way up to his latest projects. I think he was part of the Final Fantasy VII remake sound team as well.
I'm glad they brought him in for that too, because I think his biggest debut that people were familiar with was Final Fantasy X, and as you were playing that one track and you were saying you wanted to kind of highlight some of the piano stuff, I remember doing a music analysis in college about To the End of the Abyss. Are you familiar with that track? Yeah, and breaking down the two-part piano style and on the chord changes and things like that too. And so, are you familiar a little bit about his music education, like where he studied and everything?
Yeah, his studying and like his parents, like, you know, both being musical. Like I think his father was like an operatic singer and his mother was a pianist.
Right, but he also was in Germany.
Yeah,
like grew up in Germany.
Yeah,
right. And so it's on a. Most of those tracks are German, like title.
Yeah, German
like
names,
German
and like
names,
and it fits because the name or the game itself is also kind of like the setting is like medieval Germanic kind of setting, so it's all it all fits.
Right. It just what is coincidence? Maybe not, but fitting nonetheless. And I thought it was fantastic. And like I said, so it's really cool that they did bring him into, because he does have a legacy in this Final Fantasy series. He does obviously have a legacy in the Frontier series, which people may conflate or be confused, but rightfully so. It's not always clear, but still, regardless, just again, someone who's been through the times and has worked on his way through and is still has an establishment in this space is just phenomenal to me. And I think I mentioned that too, as well as like, if you could survive 20 or 30 years and your name being remembered or revered in the way, then you've made that legacy.
It's really amazing to think about, like, just some of these people that, like, again, Masashi Hamauzu, like, starting just very small, like his first project was Front Mission Gun Hazard, but like his impact in that was just like so strong that like eventually his next project was like Tobal #1, and then finally given his solo project, which was Chocobo Dungeon, which was kind of rearranging a lot of Uematsu's work. And then this game here, Saga Frontier 2, was his first actual original like solo work for a game. And again, like it just comes through so just strong, and like established him as like just this like powerhouse of composer, to where at the point he actually eventually became like the head of the Square Enix sound team. And still I think he's now like freelance, but he still works with Square and other doing other projects. But like it's just that I don't know, it's like, and again, like his influences are like Claude Debussy and Maurice Raval, and those kind of like I can't remember the name of the kind of like composers they're referred to, but finding out that those were his influences for making this soundtrack made me explore their music. So like go check out their legacy, and then even like Yellow Magic Orchestra, because he said he was influenced by Ryuichi Sakamoto, who was like one of the 3 members of Yellow Magic Orchestra, which I found their stuff and downloaded all of their soundtrack or all their albums and just obsessed over those. So it's just like this guy right here opened up a whole just like door, like whole nother place for me musically. Again, like reaching back to like the 70s, 80s with Yellow Magic Orchestra, and then even like the early 1900s with like with Raval and Debussy. And then also I wanted to note for this soundtrack, again, this is PS1, but you wouldn't think it hearing it, because it's just like everything just sounds so like clean and well like produced, and that in part is big help to Ryo Yamazaki, who did the sound programming for this game. So it was like, because those two worked together a lot in like in the PS1 era, and yeah, just like the sound design in this game is just amazing, with like the way how the pianos sound, like they don't sound sampled, they actually sound like live piano. And yeah, I could keep going on about it, but I want to pass it back on over to you. And like
I enjoy this too, because I'm learning different things. And only thing when I keep talking about the sound chip for the PlayStation, and just learning, I did a paper in college, in community college to be specific, early community college. I think it was 2009 when I was going there, and learning and doing a research paper about, it was kind of hard because it wasn't a lot of information then to find, and I had to have sources and all these other things. So I kind of hated doing the paper, but I loved that I finished the paper and did it because I was actually watching Wind Waker playthrough at the time, and for breaks. So I would, if I got through a specific part of the paper and I accomplished it, I'd treat myself by watching a playthrough of Wind Waker, like a section, and then I would be done with that. And it worked out. Whereas I finished watching the Wind Waker playthrough and the paper at the same time. It somehow worked out that way. And then for the biggest stream, it was like, okay, I'm ready to play this game now. So I ended up playing Wind Waker. Aside from that, though, I learned about the PlayStation and its streaming technology and that was the first of its kind on the PS1, because everything else was mostly, there was Nintendo 64, which did use some MIDI, and it was using obviously like trackers with MIDI in that respect too. But this one you could actually use real-time audio, and it was because of the technology. I believe CDs were out at this time, and Sony had that proprietary, that they mostly invented this technology in itself. So with the computer and the CD and all that, it made sense that it could manage that type of output. But like you said, with audio programming too, properly implemented, like it does.
And I know
a
in a case of this one here, this is because like with the PS1, it had the option of Redbook audio, which is the streaming audio from the CD, or using the actual built-in like audio processing unit, which was like had like a sequence. It's like a sequencer. I can't remember how many. I want to say it's like 24, maybe 30. I think it was over 20 different like sequence tracks it had available. So what you're hearing right now is actual sequence music, so like the actual data that's running through it, so you can hear it like in a file format like the .psf. Yeah, again, it's just like it doesn't sound like it how it sounds like. You wouldn't think, because it's like, most of the times you think sequence stuff, it sounds like kind of harsh, maybe a little rough, whereas here it's like really nice, smooth. Some things like that hi-hat are kind of a tell, but yeah, it's just the PS1 was a really cool piece of tech.
All the way. And so I'm thinking of another composer, Nathan McCree, who I was influenced by heavily growing up, because there's no doubt about this one, because I was a big Tomb Raider fan in 1996. And so, I mean, learning what Nathan was able to do because of how he grew up with listening to different orchestra performances on vinyl, from his father, and knowing the orchestra and learning it through there, and then being able to write the score that he did for Tomb Raider, it still really sounds good to me. I'm sorry. I love it. I know there's samples. I know some things are not, the best, but I think to pull that off of the way that he did, to sound as good as it did, I mean, like, I was blown away. And then to also, as some of us may know, to hear the soundtrack that's on the game, because you could buy the soundtrack obviously nowadays, but back then the soundtrack was on the game.
Yeah.
So if you did it right and you open your PlayStation in the lid and whatever, then it would go to the CD playing graphic user interface and everything. So yeah, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I did that with Cool Borders too. I would just put it in my CD player and I would hear all the tracks. Skip the first track, because otherwise your ears would be bleeding.
Yes.
But but yeah, no, I would listen to the music off a CD, off Cool Borders too, and I thought that was the only one that could do it. I didn't think to try my other ones.
Wait, so was it who developed Cool Borders?
I can't remember. It was just
Let me look that up actually.
Oh, he's looking it up, folks. You hear the clicking? You hear the clacking?
Let's see. Because I only thought it was, at first I thought it was an IDOS only type of technique they were doing, because I tried Fighter Force. No, that's not it.
Fighting Force. I think I know which game you're talking about.
Is it Fighting Force?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, IDOS did that. Yeah, and then obviously IDOS did Tomb Raider, and so I was thinking like, oh, this must be an IDOS type of thing. But if you're saying Cool Borders was able to do it, so then that means it must be a specific license that was able to kind of pull these things off.
Yeah,
as well.
Like again, it's like that Redbook audio where it's being streamed right off the CD. So like, there's like a chunk of data set aside for the game, and then there's a chunk of data set aside for the actual recorded audio. So when it had Redbook audio, so like games on the PS1, even I don't know if Saturn CDs could work, but I knew PS1, PC Engine CD, and a lot of early like CD console games, like even Sega CD stuff like that. If they had Redbook audio on it, instead of working with the audio processing unit, you could run it on a CD player, because there are actual tracks on the CD. So it's kind of, but I don't know if it was like only some of them allowed to it, or like they had it maybe some kind of weird lock on it that didn't let it happen. But it just now I kind of want to go back and try it out with all these different CDs I have.
That sounds like really good blog articles. Like, out of my collection, these are the ones that actually have soundtracks that you may not know. This is awesome. Actually, I like that.
Yeah, because again, you could tell, because here it's sequenced, but then there were some that there's really Like you could tell there's using more sounds than was capable, or that were like a lot more cleaner, or like bigger than what would be possible on that console at the time. So there's like some things there, but yeah, it's a silly thing.
Yeah, a lot of samplers, the old Rolands and some Korgs, obviously, and implementing and putting them into probably like 10 gigabytes of computer and having some kind of I would love to know the tricks and tips that they did for that. That would be amazing.
So crazy. Though, if you want to use those sounds, there's a way to rip those sounds from the actual PS, the ROMs of the PS1 games. It's a bit tricky, but you can do it, and it's a kind of a weird workaround to get those sounds.
Really?
Yeah, I've done it before with Saga Frontier 2, and it was arduous, but I was able to make it work. I had to figure out which things were, but it was cool.
Kudos to you, and I find that stuff masterful if you're able to pull that off.
Yeah, I gotta find all that stuff, and I'll forward it to you when I find out like when I remember which program it was and what steps I took, because it was kind of fun to like get those sounds that I really liked. But speaking of sounds that we really like, you want to get into your this is gonna be the last track here.
Yeah. So I might butcher this, but I'm gonna do my best, and maybe you can correct me when we're done. This is Juste, from the game Saga Frontier 2 and Hamayuzu.
Masashi Hamauzu.
Masashi.
So that was Juste, I think that's right, from Saga Frontier 2, composed by Masashi Hamauzu. And the scenario that this is from is Desert Megalith, which is really a pretty cool scene. Like, you're playing through like this kind of like this desert, like mountainous desert rock area with some little pockets of like lakes around. And at the very end, you find this place, which is what's called the Desert Megalith, which is this giant structure, just like twisted structure with like this black smoke coming out of it, and you go inside and it's just like covered in like all this like crazy web stuff, and there's a coffin where this item, which is called the egg, which is a quell, which is the way of using magic in the game, and it should be there, but it's not there. Somebody's gotten it, so you gotta go find it. But it's just like the whole visual of it, and you know, there's like that's everything that played through my head when this song started playing. So there you go.
Love it. I'm gonna have to play this one day. I can't wait. I feel like there's a PSP situation about to go down.
Oh damn! Oh, using like playing the okay. Yeah, no, I know. I'm hoping that eventually they will announce the remake or remaster, like how they did Saga Frontier remaster. Hopefully they do the Saga Frontier 2 remaster. I saw some mentionings of it, like, you know, a couple of years ago, but nothing's come of it yet. But
sure, you
know, hopefully, you know, they did like, you know, the Live Alive remake. They did, you know, all these remasters and remakes, the Pixel remasters. So hopefully they're getting to this.
Yeah, this would be
and
great.
Then who knows? Maybe they might do Unlimited Saga, as cryptic as that game was.
Is that the Xbox 360?
No, that was PS2.
Oh, okay.
And that one, like, you know, again, that music, that's Masashi Hamauzu, and that one, you know, whereas this is a really solid soundtrack, that one's like eclectic as hell, like all over the place, just like different kinds of music. But the game itself is really weird. It's like it plays like a tabletop game. It's so bizarre, but the art in it's really beautiful. But it just really is just polarizing, and people did not like it when it initially came out.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the screenshots.
But it's one of the, and it's one of those ones that really has like this really in-depth system that like takes a while for you to really understand how things work and how to do it. And once you get it, it's a bit of a fun game, you know. It's just gotta work for it.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to check that out. I'm not too familiar with that one. For some reason, I thought I had different artwork in my mind, so when I thought about the Xbox 360, that's what it came to mind. But yeah, I did check out some of the screenshots. It does look a little bizarre, but it sounds like it's worth diving into for the music alone. And like I said, I love eclectic and obscure reggae music.
And again, you know, Masashi Hamauzu, you can't go wrong.
Absolutely.
You know, so with this track, you were telling me about like why you chose this one, but yeah, I want you to really get into like, you know, why, like what this one like pulls out of you, what grabs you about it.
Again, it just kind of from the beginning, you got the nice drum rhythms that's going on. You're in the flow. There's some pads. I love the pads. I love the chords that are there. And there's like this antecedent and consequent that happens immediately. But within both of the choice that Amayuzi chooses, both those instruments are able to do these little trills. Like it's a hard trill to do. It's really fast. It's like almost like a 32nd and 64th note. And I love that. I love that you're thinking it's going down in the scale, and it goes up until it goes down again. It's almost like, no, I'm not going to let it finish. I'm going to go down. And possibly might come from, since he is a really profound piano player, comes from those type of techniques to implement and integrate those into the track. And then from that, it changes and it just modulates and goes to something else, and then you're still feeling, and now you're just in this groove, and you just can't help but just slide your head back and forth, and it just feels great. It sounds great in your ears, it feels good in your body, and then it goes back into the beginning section, which is the A section, and then there's horns now introduced, and now you feel like the maracas could come out, and like different type of dances, and it just takes me to a world of just joy. I just feel joyful listening to this. You can't be in a bad mood listening to this. It's just not possible. If you want to get some cleaning done, put this on. You'll recognize that it will. Yeah. You're getting stuff done very quickly. You're like, wait, I did all this, and I'm still jamming. Oh, I can vacuum now. Yeah, it's pretty great.
Oh man, gotta get the earbuds for that one. Dang. So I think now we're getting pretty close to closing out here. I mean, is there anything that you want to, like, final notes that you might have, like, on the top of your head?
I guess it's interesting it's going to be interesting to reflect on what legacy is until it's usually, most of that stuff is usually brought up by someone else who enjoys your body of work, like we've been kind of tapping into some of the composers that we've been talking about on the show. So being here in a reflective state in the moment, I can only hope that I make it another 13, 15 something years, whereas in it's revered in the way that I guess we're kind of looking back
that
at
is,
composers who have influenced our lives and the nostalgia that it has.
That is something like kind of just like I don't have the right word for it, but just, you know, I know for me personally, you know, what I'm doing is just like making music for myself. But, you know, I do kind of have that same hope of, like, you know, maybe like somebody will find my music from, like, you know, the weird little chiptunes I've made like 10 years ago or something, and finally like kind of get influenced by that, or just like say, oh, this is cool, you know, like,
Right.
It's like, you know,
And the podcast.
yeah, like, you know, be able to hopefully inspire others to do like their own podcast, like in if not in the vein of this, but at least, you know, kind of show them like, yeah, you could just do it, you could throw it together and just go for it, you know. And
Right.
yeah, it's just like so many different levels of like just of these things, you know, just, and ultimately it all comes down to, like, you know, yeah, bringing people that find your work just you know, joy, inspiration when they first go to, like, you know, either, you know, listen to something or write something or do something, like, you know, kind of, you know, your name may be like one of the first things they'll mention in like talking about this specific thing, and just kind of like that could ultimately be like, you know, one of the greatest, you know, kind of rewards of it.
Yeah, all the way. Exactly.
But,
I'm glad that you touched on that. I'm glad that you brought yourself into it. That's what I was looking for. And it's what about.
And yeah, because like you said, it's really hard to kind of like, you know, apply it to yourself as you're doing it in the moment, like we are right now.
Right.
And you know, so it's kind of like just kind of trying to sit down and really like look back into it. It kind of makes your head want to spin a little bit, like, you know, thinking about it, being kind of like daunted by it. It's like, oh, people are gonna listen to my stuff and get, oh no. I don't know. So, because like, you know, some of my earlier stuff is not that great.
Hey, but it's still part of the stepping stone. If you didn't make that, you wouldn't get to the part where you do enjoy the work.
Yeah, that is true. Oh man. Well, seeing as we're, you know, winding down here, why don't you tell the fine folks where they can find you?
So you can find me. You can Google Chase Bethea, or you can go to my website, chasebethea.com, see some of my blogs, things like that. I do a little mini series called How I Compose, whereas I'm breaking down specific projects from games and tracks that I've done in terms of how I did it and why I did it and what went into it. So check out the YouTube channel. You just want to dive into all the music that I do. First place I would like for you to go is chasebethea.bandcamp.com. You can support me there the best. If you're feeling that you want to kind of do other streaming platforms, I'm on all the major streaming platforms worldwide, even the ones in China: Deezer, iHeartRadio, Pandora, Apple Music, Tidal, Spotify, you name it, I'm on it. I'm just there.
And there you have it, folks. You know how to find his work. Go check it out, because it's definitely worth listening to. And so, Chase, thank you so much for coming into VG Emporium and being my first professional video game music composer guest.
So yeah, big honor. I'm thankful. It's cool to be the first in that. That's going down a legacy here, right? For both of us.
Indeed. So again, I'd like to thank you again, Chase, for coming on to the show. It was definitely something I've been looking forward to since July, when we initially talked about doing this. And yeah, it was a real blast. And then to all of you listening, thank you for coming into VG Emporium, and definitely go check out Chase's work. You know, he done told you where to find it, but I'll also be linking it in the show notes. And then to any of those that this may be your first time in because you knew that Chase would be on this episode, welcome. And I will tell you all the places that you can find VG Emporium, these being Spotify, Apple Podcast, YouTube, and YouTube Music, as well as a cool site called TerraPlayer, which is a hub for all kinds of video game related podcasts. And of course, there's the main website, vgemporium.wordpress.com. And then, of course, there are the social medias, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, as well as Blue Sky. And then, of course, I've been your host, Rage Cage, and you can find me on many of those same social medias, where the main thing I have been sharing lately is the new music I've been writing every single week as part of Weekly Beats. And speaking of music, I'm going to close the show out with a song by Chase. And it is coming from the soundtrack of the game Ground Zero, which is set to release the 25th of this month. And that is this coming Sunday. And the song is called Down the Hole to the Right. And the song was composed by our guest, Chase Bethea.